A young man with black hair sits before an elderly man in white robes, who is meticulously writing at a low desk. The elder observes the young man, noting his restless nature, grim future, and the blade at his waist. The young man begins to speak, but the elder declares he's born with a fortune for causing his parents trouble. After the fortune-telling, the young man slides the door shut and stands alone in the pouring rain. The scene shifts to a bright, modern cityscape as 37 years pass. A man in a suit rides a motorcycle, followed by a sweeping overhead view of a massive, bustling office floor. In the fast-paced world of finance, men in suits analyze fluctuating stock charts and data tickers on multiple screens. An older, confident man with black hair strides purposefully through the office he now seems to command. The man, now identified as a focused professional in a white shirt and red tie, works diligently at his desk. The setting changes to a vibrant, traffic-filled city street illuminated by the glow of neon signs at night. Doom, doom, doom. The heavy bass of a nightclub pounds as women dance under bright spotlights. A man in a white dress shirt gestures to himself, declaring that a certain principle applies to him as well. At a bar, a man explains the fierce competition of life, comparing it to the 1 in 3 million chance of becoming human. A woman in a slinky red dress approaches the man, addressing him as Mr. Han and offering to buy him a drink. The woman in red makes Mr. Han a life-changing offer, double his salary, plus a car for good results. Mr. Han confidently walks away from a luxury car, promising a VIP client a guaranteed 100% winning investment. He watches from behind as a group of colleagues, including a woman and 2 men, walk down a brightly lit corridor. Now in a car with the woman, who is wearing a lavender dress, Mr. Han states he has important client dinners planned. Slip. The woman in the lavender dress suggestively slides the strap down her shoulder, a silent invitation. Mr. Han sits at a fine dining restaurant, entertaining 3 women at a table set for 4. One of the women expresses her relief and gratitude, admitting she's glad she put her trust in him. Another woman introduces her high school friends, mentioning one's husband is a 3-star general, prompting Mr. Han to respectfully share his own military officer background. He laughs and shares a toast with the women, successfully charming them over glasses of red wine. Later, while brushing his teeth in a robe, Mr. Han mulls over financial defaults triggered by Greenwich and Porto. He watches a news broadcast announcing that an international stock market crash will have a significant impact on the country. As another man looks on, the news anchor reports the stock market could lose as much as $75 million. Mr. Han answers a call with a worried expression as the woman from the car asks if he's in the office. His workday is violently interrupted as several men in dark suits confront him. They are from the prosecutor's office. In an interrogation room, Mr. Han is questioned about his awareness of Miracle Securities buying futures in his name. Mr. Han frantically denies any knowledge, but the interrogator reveals the company's CEO tried to flee and pressures him about a cross-examination. Cornered and furious, Mr. Han reluctantly agrees to the cross-examination as a sign points toward the interview rooms. The interrogator claims they had a deal for a 20% commission, accusing Mr. Han of dragging him into the mess, leaving Mr. Han utterly baffled and enraged. Hick. A woman tearfully confesses she was threatened and forced to sleep with someone, an act her husband knows nothing about, as Mr. Han listens grimly. On the phone, Mr. Han despairs over needing 10 grand, while a woman in the background frantically urges him to get a car loan or do anything to find the money. Now, in a prison uniform numbered 2345, a handcuffed Mr. Han resigns himself to the fact that he was fooled. A woman visits him in prison, asking him to fix things when he gets out for the sake of her unknowing husband. He thanks her quietly. The visiting woman is angrily confronted by her friends, who accuse her of being complicit in introducing them to Mr. Han, who hangs his head in shame. In the stark reality of prison life, Mr. Han and other inmates sleep in a communal cell. Asleep in his prison cot, he wonders if he's having a nightmare as the vision of a beautiful woman appears before him. The mysterious woman, wrapped in a white sheet, appears in a golden haze and calls out his name. Chase. She tenderly caresses his face, her voice a soft whisper, as she calls him, my emperor. Leaning close, she tells him that a place like this is no home for him. In a courtroom, a judge sentences Chase Han to 3 years in prison, taking into account an agreement with the victims. Chase flinches as the judge announces 2 of the 3 years will be on probation. Bang bang, the gavel falls, sealing his fate. Schwa. Rain pours down on a bleak, quiet neighborhood street. Now free but disheveled, Chase stands in the rain, looking at his phone with a weary expression. His phone service has been suspended. He exhales a cloud of defeated breath into the cold, damp air. He notices a rain-soaked newspaper on the wet ground, featuring an article about a man in a suit. Elsewhere, in a prison bathroom, another man involved in the case repeatedly and violently bangs his head against the concrete wall. Standing in the relentless downpour, Chase looks up with a heavy heart, his face a mask of exhaustion and despair. An elderly man with a long white beard considers the birth date May 9, 1977, but notes the time is unknown. The fortune teller hums in thought, stroking his long white beard as he prepares to write. Across the table, the elder clicks his tongue in disapproval, causing a worried Chase Han to look on. To change his fate, the elder suggests an exorcism, offering Chase a special price of $500. Plink. On a payphone, Chase desperately seeks his birth time, but the woman on the other end can't help. He arrives at a different location, a brick building with a sign for Burt fortune telling. The new fortune teller with a headband tells Chase his destiny was to be a cop or a prosecutor. Chase angrily retorts that he obviously isn't a cop, prompting the annoyed fortune teller to ask why he's yelling. At yet another consultation, a female fortune teller repeats the cop or prosecutor destiny, calling his life futile but hinting at a controversial solution. Chase is left confused and speechless by her strange, suggestive comment. After sleeping with the female fortune teller, Chase mulls over his fate while she smokes, dismissing his destiny as just that, fate. She tells him he's troubled for being on the wrong path, while he wonders why everyone is pushing him to be a cop. She coyly suggests that other professions besides cops get to swing their guns, leaving Chase perplexed by her words. The scene shifts to a peaceful forest canopy, filled with the chirping of birds. Chase walks wearily down a forest path, his breath heavy with exhaustion. He follows a man in a red jacket deeper into the woods, heading towards an unknown destination. Chase asks the man for directions to Yanju Temple to find Father Samuel, and is warned the monk there demands a high price for a fortune. He finally arrives at his destination, the serene and traditional Yanju Temple. Inside, a bald monk sings opera before bluntly asking Chase about his deceased parents and his youth. Having finished his consultation, a dejected Chase puts on his shoes and prepares to leave the temple. He observes a group of people waiting patiently on a bench marked with a waiting line sign. A man with glasses, presumably in the line, takes a quiet moment to smoke a cigarette. An older woman with a pink beret sits with her eyes closed, deep in thought as she waits. Chase stands silently before a stone basin of water, contemplating his next move. Grab? He makes a decision, reaching into the basin to take a wooden ladle. His reflection in the water reveals his full name and birth details. Chase Han, born May 9, 1977 at 5 a.m. As the water distorts his image, he reflects that he had no control over the factors that determined his fate. The scene changes to the exterior of a bookstore, signaling a new chapter in his search for answers. Inside, Chase browses the shelves, picking up a book as he seeks a new kind of knowledge. He becomes absorbed in a book, pointing to a specific passage as he studies its contents intently. From a book on fortune-telling, he learns the key to success is to use the fate he was born with. Continuing his research, he learns that using a pre-granted fortune will yield good results. He studies a page closely, discovering that one needs assurance for a blessing to compensate for misfortune. Tapping a book, he smiles with dawning realization that this assurance is the key to welcoming hope into his life. His hope deflates as he concludes the books are just recycled nonsense from ancient fortune-telling texts. The setting shifts to a quiet, steeply sloped alleyway in a residential neighborhood. Now at home, Chase sits cross-legged on the floor in quiet meditation, his expression calm and focused. At his desk, he writes a new fortune for himself, declaring his misfortune will end this year. Smoking on his balcony at night, he looks out over the city with a pensive, determined expression. He stares at the city lights, vowing that the stars will align for a jackpot and telling the world to wait. In his office, surrounded by newspaper clippings, he decides to hold off on selling, waiting for a coming announcement. Click. At 3 a.m., He ends a business call, an empty noodle cup, signifying a long night of work. Vroom. A sleek white BMW speeds down the narrow alley toward his building. A large, stern-looking man in a suit gets out of the car with an imposing presence. Tap. Inside, Chase works feverishly, tapping away at his computer with a cigarette between his lips. His focus is absolute as his fingers fly across the keyboard, executing his plan. Bang, bang, bang. Loud, insistent knocking at his door shatters his concentration, startling him mid-chat with clients. The frantic banging continues as unseen visitors demand Mr. Han open the door immediately. Chase opens the door to the imposing man, who questions him about bonds entrusted to them by a Sarah Lee. PFFT. The man smirks, congratulating a cornered Mr. Han for hiding so well. Chase resignedly tells the imposing man to do whatever he wants, as he has nothing left to lose. The imposing man sits on the floor, promising to provide food for himself and the dog, as Chase stares doubtfully at his bag. The man reveals 2 pugs, money and cash from his bag, as Chase frets. The man, now identified as Mr. Han's associate, assures him the money will appear within a week. In a hazy memory or dream, the mysterious woman from prison embraces him, gently asking if he still remembers her. Lying beside him in a swirl of white sheets, she leans in close and asks if he missed her. She whispers, "My emperor," as she tenderly kisses him, lost in the dreamlike moment. Snore. Chase wakes up to the harsh reality of his new roommate, loudly snoring beside him, a pug sleeping at his feet. Exasperated, Chase glares at the man, who continues to sleep soundly and noisily. Leaning over the sleeping man, Chase wonders if he's dead, only to be answered by a loud PBBBT sound from his lips. Ugh! At his breaking point, Chase raises his foot to kick the man, but freezes as his roommate's eyes snap open. Caught in the act, Chase stammers that he was doing nothing. The 2 men awkwardly wish each other goodnight. Now trying to sleep in the kitchen, Chase covers his ears in agony as the loud snoring and lip-flapping continues. He grimaces in frustration, unable to escape the relentless noise invading his thoughts. The scene shifts to the quiet, empty alley outside. A brief moment of peace before the next day. The imposing man plays fetch with his pugs in the small apartment, calling out to money and cash. While Chase tries to work at his computer, the man laughs as the dogs bark and chase the ball around him. His work is further disrupted, as the dogs climb on him while he's on the phone. Nearby, the man complains on his own call about a weird guy. A stressed-out Chase clenches his teeth, overwhelmed by the chaos of his new living situation. Trickle. A pug pees on the floor, prompting an unseen person to cry out, "Not again." Flushed with anger, Chase glares at his roommate, who nonchalantly asks if he's going to clean up the mess. Ring. The day's frustrations are interrupted by a phone call, which Chase answers as a voice asks for Mr. Chase Han. After confirming his identity, the caller from STV broadcast asks about his fortune-telling business, puzzling Chase. Chase firmly denies owning any such business, but the caller seems insistent and surprised. The caller mysteriously insists, "You have to," leaving a confused Chase wondering what they're talking about. Chase reiterates his denial, as his roommate Kenny Lee watches him with a thoughtful expression while holding a tablet. An STV broadcast van pulls into the narrow alleyway below Chase's apartment building. A production crew unloads their equipment from the van, heading towards the entrance of the building. Met at the door by Kenny, the crew asks if he's Mr. Han. Kenny introduces himself and gestures inside, revealing Chase is there. Now dressed as a fortune teller, Chase is filmed by the crew, who tell him he's an internet sensation for predicting the failures of other psychics. Kenny suggests Chase is trying to stay hidden from the public, but Chase humbly claims he's not interested in worldly desires. The scene dramatically shifts to a view of a solar eclipse over a planet, signaling the start of his explanation. As the fortune teller, Chase begins his lecture by referencing an ancient star called Jove, now known as the planet Jupiter. He continues his astronomical lesson, detailing Jupiter's immense mass and its nearly 12-year orbital period around the sun. Swirl. Using a mug and a lighter for demonstration, he illustrates how long it takes the massive planet to complete its orbit. He explains how ancient people connected Jupiter's 12-year cycle to the 12 zodiac animals and the calendar, creating the foundation of modern divination. Chase emphasizes the powerful gravitational pull that exists between the moon, the sun, Jupiter, and Earth. He compares this celestial force to the remarkable and massive movement of water during high and low tides. Chase concludes that humans are imbued with this cosmic energy at birth, which forms the true basis of fortune-telling, unlike the tricks of psychics. Impressed, the producer shows him the show's format. Chase confirms the 10 grand prize for first place with a confident smirk. Back at home, Chase and Kenny, accompanied by a pug, intently watch the fortune-telling competition on their computer. The TV show, Battle of the Fortunes, introduces its final 4 contestants. The host highlights the surprise inclusion of a contestant who appeared out of nowhere. With Chase revealed as contestant number 4, Kenny cheers as the host announces one of the judges has voted for him. It's a unanimous vote for contestant 4. Chase and Kenny erupt in celebration, hugging triumphantly as they secure first place. Later, a quiet moment is broken when Kenny clears his throat and awkwardly asks Chase for his age. Wow. Kenny looks through a thick binder filled with notes, amazed as he asks Chase if he really wrote it all himself during their celebratory meal. Chase explains he synthesized useless ancient texts into an easy-to-understand system that even helped him with stocks before a bad date left him in debt. As Chase takes a drink, Kenny muses that he could make money with his skills, but wonders how clients will find him without his name or face being on the show. The answer becomes clear as a long line of people forms on the walkway leading to their building. Kenny marvels at the power of the internet as he and Chase look at the massive queue of potential clients, one of whom is already asking for lucky numbers. Kenny welcomes the first client, a woman in a brown coat, announcing that the fortune teller is ready for her. The client expresses surprise at Chase's youthful appearance, asking if he's truly the winner from the show. Chase confirms it's a common reaction. Outside, a different man in a white shirt manages the growing line of clients, handing a ticket to the next person. Bow. The woman with short brown hair bows respectfully after receiving her ticket. The ticket giver puts his hands together in response, while nearby, Kenny marvels at the sheer number of people flocking to their door. As night falls, a satisfied client thanks her unseen consultant for the late appointment, feeling confident in her decision as she leaves. Inside, an utterly exhausted Chase lies sprawled on the floor, while Kenny gazes at a box overflowing with the day's earnings. Tap, tap. Kenny sits at the table, methodically counting the large stacks of cash from their successful day. The view shifts outside, showing the long, winding queue of clients still waiting patiently for a consultation. A new day begins with Chase, now wearing a headband, personally handing out tickets to the waiting clients. The scene transitions to a daytime exterior view of their busy apartment building. Kenny presents the day's earnings, a respectable $5 grand, prompting a thoughtful Chase to call out his name. Chase admits there's a limit to how many clients he can see, sparking a determined look from Kenny, who decides he should start learning the craft too. The scene shifts to a dark alley where 2 men in suits discuss the legitimacy of a late-night meeting at a place called Ducant. The 2 men arrive, uncertain where to go next. The man in the brown jacket tells his companion to call their contact again. They enter a Tusum Palace, a cafe, where a man with glasses is already waiting and working on his laptop. The 2 men sit with the programmer, who explains that building their program will require significant money and time, but the man in brown assures him it's not a problem. The programmer estimates a cost of 70 grand over 6 months, noting a similar top site made 7 million last year. The associate nudges his boss, sure, he can beat that. The man in brown has a flash of insight, realizing this venture is the real deal and far bigger than he initially imagined. 6 months later, the story jumps forward with a view of a bustling, modern city street. In a sleek new office, the man in brown stands before a team seated at a conference table and declares the meeting has begun. He turns to a now suited-up Kenny, telling him it's his turn, leaving Kenny momentarily confused. To test their new fortune-telling website, he asks for Kenny's birth details, which Kenny provides. September 9th, 1982, at 2 a.m. Preparing to read the results, he tells Kenny to correct any mistakes, then accurately describes him as a reckless gambler who's quick to seize opportunities. Kenny admits the reading is surprisingly accurate as the man continues, detailing his spending habits, investment dreams, and the influence of his ancestors' misfortunes. The fortune reading continues, noting his sharp tongue and artistic taste, but warning of a potential fall from grace if he disrespects the law. The reading becomes shockingly personal, mentioning tattoos, leaving home, and violent behavior, prompting a stunned Kenny to admit he's been to prison twice. The scene transitions to an overhead view of the city under an ominous, cloudy sky. Multiple people are shown using the new fortune-telling service on their devices, only to be met with a paywall for a premium account. Smile. The man behind the new venture sits alone in his office, looking pleased with his creation. Ring, R-R-I-N-G. He answers a call from a woman named Chelsea, who asks if he's skipping an important annual event again. A quiet residential neighborhood street is shown, setting the scene for a family visit. In a flashback or memory, a man bows deeply on the floor before a woman and her 2 young daughters. In the present, the man from the phone call, Chase, sits at a dinner table while a woman serves food and a child plays nearby. Chelsea speculates about a man named Matt while looking at an envelope of money. Chase reveals he's paid off his debts and is now living in Gangnam. Shocked by the large sum of cash, Chelsea asks where in Gangnam he's living. He coolly replies that he's on the east side, with the rich. She questions the source of his wealth, asking if he's involved in something shady to have earned so much so quickly. After a moment of hesitation, Chase begins to confess his new profession, revealing he's become a fortune teller, which leaves Chelsea utterly bewildered. The moment continues as Chase confirms he is a fortune teller, and his sister stares back in complete disbelief. Slam! Chelsea angrily slaps the money on the table, questioning his seriousness after their family sacrificed to send him to college. Chase tries to explain by mentioning the TV show he won. He explains that the TV show led to a lucrative website, and everything has just fallen into place. He offers her a reading, which she says will be free since they're family. As her children sleep, Chelsea reflects on the hopeful fortune Chase gave her husband. A stable, good life in a warm country, bringing her visible relief. She thanks Chase, relieved by the positive reading, but he dismisses her gratitude. Changing the subject, Chelsea asks about a mutual acquaintance, Judy, her friend's younger sister. Chase dismisses Judy due to her educational background, prompting Chelsea to ask about his own. He reminds her he never graduated high school because he was working to pay for her college. He tells his sister she's twisting his words and that he didn't mean to imply she was ungrateful. Hurt, Chelsea sarcastically tells him to go find a well-educated, rich woman while she stays behind in their tacky city playing the piano. Chase bluntly asks if she really wants to spend the rest of her life dead broke, leaving her speechless. He argues that her wrist injury, not him, made her quit piano. She retorts by bringing up his time in jail and the something that happened to him then. In a painful flashback, Chase recalls his father's words about their family's financial ruin during a crisis. Back in the present, he slams the table in frustration after his sister walks away. Phew. Chase sighs, looking at 2 framed memorial photos of an elderly couple on a shelf. Ring, R-R-I-N-G. Back at the old apartment, the phone rings, waking a pug sleeping on the couch. A groggy Kenny sits up in bed and answers the phone, asking who's calling. Kenny asks who it is, and on the other end, a woman with brown hair asks if she can see him now. As Chase leaves with the pugs, telling Kenny he'll be back soon, he overhears a woman outside mention 15 grand, piquing his curiosity. Vroom! Now in the back of a car, Chase looks pleased as he's driven to his next appointment. He arrives at a lavish, modern home, where a woman with short brown hair waits for him in the living room. The woman slides a blue folder across the table, explaining it contains her brother's birth date. She reveals that her brother is currently being investigated as Chase listens intently. With a serious expression, she states that she needs to know what is going to happen to him. Chase quietly reviews the documents she provided, a thoughtful look on his face. Scribble, scribble. He begins writing notes on a pad of paper as the woman waits patiently. The woman nervously asks if anything serious is going to happen, and Chase gravely confirms that her brother will have a brush with the law and serve time in prison. She argues that her brother, a media CEO and corporate vice chairman, is too powerful to be jailed, claiming no CEO has ever been imprisoned in their country, but Chase calmly maintains his prediction. Unfazed, Chase tells her to wait and see for herself. The woman stands, thanks him, and prepares to leave. PFFT. Outside the Yulson Art Gallery, Chase smirks, wondering why she thanked him for bad news while confirming his 15 grand payment. Later, the phone rings again as the woman calls, asking to see him now. Kenny answers, annoyed, while elsewhere, a man in bed groggily checks a text message. Snore. The sleeping man, Kenny's boss, glances at the glowing phone screen, displaying a message thanking him for the other day. Back in the luxurious home, the woman asks Chase what he thinks will happen now. Chase considers the situation, calculating that since it's September, her brother will likely be released in about a year. Surprised by the year-long sentence, she listens as Chase suggests that telling her brother the release date might put him at ease. Flinch. Startled, the woman quickly insists that easing her brother's mind is not her concern. She leans forward, admitting that there will actually be more trouble if he gets out. Chase calmly clarifies that he wasn't offering advice, merely stating what the fortune tells him. A few days later, the woman calls someone, offering to introduce them to the man who is helping her, as Chase rides in a car with the man who notes she's calling again. Chase mentions the client's stressed confidentiality, while his companion, the boss, gripes that Chase's accuracy has her hooked and calling constantly, crudely comparing her to an animal in heat. Chase curtly tells him to shut up before the boss asks if the brother is still in prison. Startled, the boss stares as Chase shows him a news alert. Yulson Group's CEO, Terry Young, has been hospitalized, sparking succession rumors and tanking stocks. Chase reflects on the woman's unhappy reaction to the news of her brother's release in a year. Driving toward the Yulson Hotel, Chase narrates that with different mothers and only one CEO position, a power struggle is inevitable. A security guard announces a quick inspection, demanding their phones. After a moment of silence, Chase complies. An older, well-dressed man with dark hair greets Chase, remarking on how young he is for a fortune teller. Chase smiles, admitting it's a common reaction, as the man reiterates how unusual his profession is for someone his age. The older man asks if Chase performs exorcisms, but Chase clarifies he only reads fortunes. The man, a leading presidential candidate with health concerns, hopes the consultation arranged by Madame Young won't be a waste of time. The presidential candidate announces he's thinking of retiring, but Chase, examining his notes, internally calls him a liar, prompting a shocked reaction from the man. Chase quickly recovers, dismissing his thought as nothing. The older man awkwardly clears his throat while his assistant stands by. Chase looks on, seemingly confused by the man's odd behavior. Asked about his health, Chase reassures the man he has no health issues and will be fine for 10 years. Relieved, the man thanks him as Chase adds that while he'll face difficulties next year, he'll overcome them to win the public's trust. Later, Chase looks intently at Yuli Jung, telling her he thinks it's time for her to switch sides. In an office, Yuli asks why he told the candidate he'd be fine for 10 years. Chase admits he was just reading the vibe in the room. Walking down a corporate hallway, Chase is stunned to see the CEO of Yule Securities, realizing he's now in the center of the financial world and bowing respectfully. Tisk, the CEO's assistant, crudely remarks on Madame Jung's taste in aged escorts, earning a sharp warning from his colleague that the boss can hear him. Overlooking a pair of modern skyscrapers, Chase's voiceover promises to tell a woman what she needs to be aware of from now on. A woman with dark hair and a bun spots a man on the phone near the elevators, recognizing him as the vice president. An associate explains that Vice President Winston Kim, born in the year of the horse, requires an agent born in the year of the tiger, who must wear a black suit and a red tie to their next meeting. Yuli reports on the phone that everything went well, as the man with the red tie confirms a deal to open 2,000 new stores in Asia. A narration explains one must change everything to their lucky color, blue, to alter their fortune, showing a blue truck and a blue uniform. Chase confidently directs movers, telling them to place a large mirror in a specific spot. A news report highlights Yujin's rise in the financial and electronics industries, a success achieved while Yulson Group's vice chairman Harrison Young serves his prison sentence. The news continues, crediting Yuli Jung, the CEO's daughter, for Yulson Group's rising stock prices and successful expansion into Asia. In a spacious modern office overlooking the city, Yuli Jung stands pensively before a window until a sharp knock breaks her thoughts. Meeting with Chase, Yuli explains her father's failing health and asks him to identify any potential threats to her company, a request he silently considers. Chase asks for a favor in return, explaining he runs a small company and needs a push to take it public, clarifying that he isn't asking for a direct investment. The scene transitions to a nighttime view of a brightly lit office building in the city. Later, Chase works at his desk, reviewing the resumes of Jack Lee and York Kim as he contemplates who might harm Yuli's company. With a look of intense focus, Chase holds a pen, ready to make a decision. Clap, clap. In a triumphant moment, Chase and his employees applaud as their company, My Fortune Company Limited, is displayed on a stock market board. Riding in an elevator, two businessmen gossip about Chase, remarking on his youth and how he struck it rich after a TV show appearance. The older, gray-haired man from the elevator seethes with rage, clenching his fist and muttering, "That bastard!" The scene flashes back to the successful stock market debut, with Chase and his team celebrating the launch of My Fortune Company Limited. Swoosh! Chase dramatically unveils the plaque for his new office, My Fortune Company Limited, as his employees erupt in applause behind him. The company is shown to be thriving, with hands busy at a laptop and an office full of employees working diligently in their cubicles. A pristine white luxury car arrives at a modern building, and a sharply dressed Chase steps out onto the pavement. On a sunlit balcony, Chase gazes at a beautiful, ethereal woman in a flowing white dress. Smiling contentedly, Chase admits that life is fun now and feels worth living. Swish. As the mysterious woman's hair begins to glow, Chase looks at her with confusion and asks who she is. Chirp, chirp. Waking in a sun-drenched bedroom, Chase sits up, the memory of his dream lingering. The scene shifts to the exterior of the Moonlight Lounge Club at night. Inside the club, Chase's boss tells a woman in red that a certain man spends lavishly because it's not his own money, leaving her impressed. A man with slicked-back dark hair answers a phone call, curtly telling the person on the other end to be quiet as his female companion looks on, puzzled. Riding in a car, Chase sees an incoming call from Madame Jung and quietly wonders if he should tell her something important. The head secretary leads Chase and another man through a grand corporate lobby before knocking on a large door and guiding them inside. Chase introduces himself as Chase Han to a young man flanked by two women in bikinis, who remarks on Chase's youth before dismissing the women. The man thanks Chase for helping his sister, and Chase humbly replies that he did his best. The man's tone darkens as he asks if helping his sister meant Chase killed people too, a question that makes Chase look away grimly. With a disdainful smirk, the man mutters, "That bitch," causing Chase to look up in shock. The man lets out a sinister chuckle, his expression filled with malice. Leaning in, the man asks if Chase knows the real reason his sister's husband took his own life, but Chase remains silent. After a pause, Chase confirms he has an idea. The man then asks for his prediction on whether she'll win. Chase stares into the distance, his face a mask of contemplation against a turbulent, abstract background. The man calmly tells Chase to go. When a confused Chase asks for clarification from another room, the man simply repeats his command, "Spring." As Chase stands to leave, the man stops him, and another man with red glasses enters. Chase calmly turns back. Walking through a deserted parking garage, Chase internally grumbles about being summoned so late at night for such a brief and cryptic meeting. Screech! A car skids to a halt right beside him, and he turns with a questioning look. Chase watches as a woman with long, dark hair gracefully exits a white sedan. His eyes widen in recognition as he stares at the woman who has just arrived. The mysterious woman with flowing dark hair walks confidently toward the building. Chase realizes with a jolt that she is the ghost from his dream. She turns and looks at him with a questioning glance. A concierge bows, welcoming the woman as Madam and informing her that someone is waiting upstairs, all while Chase observes from the shadows. Suddenly understanding the situation, Chase looks up at the building and furiously curses the man he just met. "That bastard." Chase drinks alone, flashing back to a conversation with his boss, who bluntly states that Chase's life is trash, with his only redeeming quality being his father, Chomp. As his boss munches on a late-night snack, Chase questions how he can even eat at this hour. The boss shares his family's painful history. His college-educated mother's life was ruined paying his father's medical bills, and his pianist sister gave up her future. Chase recounts how his own mother worked, giving facials to her former high school friends to put him through college after his father's business failed. He reveals his belief that he was fated to ruin his parents, but will hit a gold mine at age 42, prompting his boss to question his current finances. A thought strikes Chase, and he asks his boss to investigate someone for him. Security footage shows the mysterious woman arriving as his boss explains she's a shaman, much to Chase's surprise. A close-up shot focuses on the serene, knowing face of the shaman. Standing in an office, his boss crosses his arms and confirms his previous statement. "She's a shaman." Chase reacts with visible shock and disbelief, repeating the question, "A shaman?" Chase's boss clarifies that the woman is a famous shaman, so infamous that the vice chairman is too terrified to act against her after she was possessed by the past chairman. He continues, explaining that she has performed exorcisms for countless powerful business moguls and politicians. Jingle. He recalls how she possessed a famous screenwriter, writing a story that won the woman a major award. He also mentions she performed an exorcism for a baseball manager, helping him achieve 3 consecutive championships. As Chase processes this, he flashes back to the ghost from his dream, trying to dismiss the connection as a ridiculous coincidence. But his boss adds that she even helped police find a missing body. Haunted by the memory, he recalls her whispering, "My emperor," and warning him that he shouldn't be there. After clearing his throat, Chase concludes the shaman is on the vice chairman's side and will cause them trouble. His boss asks for clarification, so Chase explains that a shaman's possession is temporary, rendering them powerless once the spirit leaves. Chase states his methods are completely different, but his boss challenges him, asking what he'll do if she's both possessed and uses his kind of abilities. Chase reveals that his fortune-telling doesn't work on the already possessed and begins to explain the process of how they gain their powers through fasting and prayer in caves. He explains that their weakened bodies become susceptible to possession, which is how they gain the ability to see a person's past. In a flashback, a woman on a hiking trail urgently tells another hiker to hurry home, correctly guessing she left her gas stove on. As Chase concludes his explanation, his boss reveals he already has the shaman's address but warns Chase he'll have to kneel before her. Chase reacts with pure, unadulterated shock, shouting, "You kidding me?" Arriving at the formidable Yurha shrine, a frustrated Chase sighs and turns to leave, thinking the whole thing is ridiculous. He enters a traditional, sunlit room to find the shaman waiting for him. The shaman, the woman from his dreams, turns to face him with a serene expression. PFFT. She lets out a small, amused laugh. With a knowing smile, she asks if he didn't come all this way just to see her. She states her birth date aloud, stunning Chase with her knowledge. She repeats her question with a gentle smile, asking if he didn't come here to see her. She gestures toward a notepad on the table, offering him a place to begin his work. Now, sitting opposite each other, Chase prepares to give her a reading. Chase begins his fortune-telling, stating that at age 7, she first began to see and hear supernatural things. Chase continues, explaining that at 9, her energy grew strong enough to revive a dead tree. A flashback shows her as a child, Helena, being warned away from a sick dog but reaching for it anyway. He notes her devout faith, but warns that her real problems will begin starting next year. Her energy became uncontrollable, he says, as the flashback shows Helena collapsing in a school hallway while her peers shout her name in alarm. In a memory, a disheveled Helena walks down a dark street as 2 former college club members recognize her. Mumble. She walks past them, muttering to herself incoherently. Schwa. The scene transitions with the sound of wind rustling through leaves. She sits in serene meditation, surrounded by the tranquility of a sun-dappled forest. Her meditation is interrupted as she watches a man and woman hike up a path nearby. She observes the approaching hikers with a calm, unreadable expression. She calls out a stark warning, telling the couple they will be beaten to death if they walk back down together. When the man scoffs at her rudeness, she calmly tells them to walk separately, informing the woman her husband is waiting at the bottom. Push. Heeding the warning, the woman pushes her male companion ahead to walk alone. In another vision, a woman in white robes greets someone who has finally arrived and is bowing low. A close-up reveals the bowing woman is crying, tears streaming down her face. Haha. Back in the present, the shaman erupts in laughter after hearing Chase's reading. Her laughter cuts off as she seems struck by a sudden thought. Standing up, she invites Chase for a drink, acknowledging the effort he made to come see her. In the car, Chase worries about how to ask about his dream, but she distracts him by inviting him to a large exorcism. She explains they sacrifice a cow for people who don't get better in the hospital, causing Chase to scoff at the idea. She muses that, to the gods, all creatures are petty, but Chase still questions why the sacrifice must be a cow. Her expression turns serious as she declares that sacrifices must always be offered in blood. A gruesome image of a severed, bleeding animal head illustrates her point as she explains that live offerings are required to pay for sins. Over a backdrop of blood splatters and the moon, she notes that ancient civilizations worldwide offered animal sacrifices in place of humans. She smiles wryly, reminding him that she studied theology. The scene ends as they drive through the illuminated city at night. A woman with wavy brown hair warns another woman with dark hair pulled back that she will get into an accident if she goes on her date tonight. The brown-haired woman sits alone in a sleek, purple-lit room, looking pensive. A hazy vision of the same woman appears as someone questions if she's the ghost from their dream. At a bar with the woman, Chase wonders to himself what she called him in that dream. The woman calls him Emperor, and the single word sends a jolt through Chase. She smiles warmly and declares that he is destined to become an emperor. Addressing him as Chase, she proposes they build a powerful empire together, one so great that the world's wealthiest people wouldn't dare look down on them. A confused Chase listens as she explains that she's completed numerous jobs for rich clients, both large and small. With a glass of wine in hand, she confesses that her work wasn't always good and admits she's done bad things too. She reveals she's performed malicious exorcisms, such as ruining a company or exposing a politician's affair, noting how Madame Zheng used her as a weapon. Chase is shocked by the admission. Chase smirks, pointedly asking if that's also why she's killed people, but she just scoffs in amusement. In a memory, an older man curses someone, as a woman with short brown hair coolly plans to have the shaman eliminate the vice president's men, using the shaman's father as a convenient excuse. Chase listens silently as the shaman clarifies she's not there just to spend time with him, but for the present, piquing his curiosity. She reveals the present is his big bet on the stock market, explaining she's helped her client earn huge sums before, but fears her god will abandon her if she becomes too greedy. As images of handcuffs and a grim newspaper headline flash, she confesses she's worried and wants to stop this dangerous life. She asks him to pour her another drink, but he questions her, wondering if she wants something else entirely. Her demeanor shifts as she addresses him as Chase, her voice taking on a maternal tone, telling him not to worry because she knows what he's going through, leaving him bewildered. Continuing to channel his mother, she recalls him crying after carrying her heavy bag, promising to get rich and buy her nice things. Cough. A flashback shows a weary woman, his mother, packing a large green bag with countless bottles of medicine. In the memory, his mother says she has to go and tells a young Chase to just focus on studying hard. Walking under an umbrella in the pouring rain, his mother sighs about his stubbornness as young Chase looks ahead with a hardened expression. Squeeze. He clutches the strap of his bag, his name tag, Chase Ha, visible on his school uniform. They walk away together down a drenched alleyway, disappearing into the rain. The scene transitions to a shot of a modern, illuminated office building at night. Back in the present, Chase sits in an office as the shaman reveals she met the vice president before his jail time, a comment that triggers a sudden realization in Chase about the stock market. Jumping to his feet, Chase exclaims, "That's it!" as the pieces finally click into place. He smiles, now understanding why she called him her emperor, while his boss looks on in complete confusion. The scene shifts to the exterior of a modern cafe on a bright day. Inside, Chase sits down with his boss, who asks what he wanted to discuss. His boss mentions working at Merlink for a time, prompting Chase to ask if it's true that even Wall Street elites consult with shamans. The boss confirms it, explaining that powerful people seek spiritual guidance to overcome their limits, with fund managers and Hollywood figures being common clients. Looking at two towering skyscrapers, Chase thinks to himself, what? Chase argues against reading children's fortunes, but the woman with short brown hair dismisses his concern, stating that kids eventually become adults. Chase informs the woman that he's going overseas for several months, and she receives the news with a silent, stoic expression. In her office, she confronts him for not reporting back, but he brushes it off, claiming he didn't get a good feeling about the matter. The two stand in a tense silence on opposite sides of the spacious, sunlit office. Lying in bed, the shaman tells Chase about the goddess of wind, and he asks for the story. She recounts the tragic tale of a princess from Heppen who was betrayed by her lover and fell from the castle wall to her death. He muses that her prediction might come true, that he could become the emperor of the world stock market when he turns 42 next year. She gently touches his face, whispering that it's not safe for them to move together. Thwump. She falls back onto the bed, admitting she once disobeyed an order from the vice chairman. The consequence was a severe car accident the very next day, a dump truck ramming into her, making her realize the wealthy will eliminate anyone who disobeys because they are easily replaceable. PFFT. Chase exhales sharply and turns to her, angrily cursing the people who hurt her. She looks at him intently, her expression soft, as she asks for his agreement. Chase's boss hands him a folder, instructing him to carry out the enclosed plan when he calls from abroad. Chase and the shaman walk arm in arm down a graffiti-lined alley toward a white sedan. As they stroll down a paved path, she mentions the upcoming merger announcement, and he reveals he gave them the date months ago. Chase details his plan. He sold his My Fortune stocks, bought into Yulson Electronics, and will move the money through a paper company in the Bahamas. He warns her they must be careful because their enemies will not let them escape so easily. He instructs her to act normal to avoid alerting the vice chairman to their plan, and she silently nods in agreement. As they stand close, the shaman asks Chase if he knows their target has a child out of wedlock, and he confirms he read it in the man's fortune. She explains she had to move the exorcism because a woman tried to expose it to the press, prompting Chase to curse them under his breath. Urging her to move quickly, Chase says he's left all the necessary documents with Kenny, and they walk off together. The scene shifts to Chase, who looks out an airplane window at the clouds below, his journey underway. Now overseas, a confident Chase and an associate walk out of the revolving doors of a modern corporate building. In a sleek boardroom, Chase stands before three executives, beginning his high-stakes presentation. He begins by explaining the sexagenary cycle, a 60-term system used in Asian philosophy, prompting one of the men to muse on world history's own cyclical nature. Flash! A complex chart appears as Chase declares they can use this ancient system to predict the stock market. He explains that the stock market's 180-year history can be categorized into 60-year cycles using mass data. A detailed diagram illustrates how the cycle can be broken down into periods of 60 months, 60 days, or even 60 hours. Chase confidently concludes that by inputting key references, they can generate accurate predictions for the entire world stock market. He offers to demonstrate his system's power by showing them the market's history for the last 180 years and its predictions for the next 60. Ring. Back in a car, a phone on the dashboard lights up with an incoming call from Chase. The shaman answers excitedly, telling Chase that the executives agreed to the deal. He calmly states it's time to wire the money to the Bahamas. The scene transitions to a stunning nighttime view of the illuminated Brooklyn Bridge, setting the stage in New York City. While driving, the shaman's expression suddenly turns to one of alarm. Her look of shock and concern intensifies as she continues to drive. On the phone, a man with styled hair warns her not to get any shady ideas, while she listens with a worried expression. As he reminds her that she knows what he's capable of, her phone displays an incoming call from the vice chairman, confirming her fears. An ominous overhead shot shows an ambulance parked in its designated spot next to a black sedan. A white sedan speeds along a winding coastal road under a bright, sunny sky. The shaman steps out of the car, her dress and hair flowing in the strong seaside wind as she looks ahead with determination. Doom! The heavy beat of music thumps through a packed nightclub as a crowd dances under neon lights. At a desolate beach, two figures walk toward a large tent prepared for the exorcism ritual. Dressed in white ceremonial robes, the shaman stands ready, holding two curved blades with a cow in the background. A man in similar robes leads a solemn brown cow forward, a heavy hammer in his other hand. Moo! The cow lets out a sorrowful cry, a tear streaming from its eye as it senses its fate. As the shaman approaches a ceremonial altar, another attendant pushes a person completely covered by a white sheet in a wheelchair. The mysterious, sheet-covered figure in the wheelchair is positioned directly before the ornate altar. The shaman raises her twin blades high, her body poised to begin the ritual dance. Clang! The sound of her blades striking together echoes as she performs a spiritual dance before the seated observers. Lost in the ritual, she realizes with growing unease that she doesn't feel any spiritual connection. Clunk! Her concentration broken, the ceremonial blades slip from her grasp and fall to the ground. She stares at the shrouded figure, realizing with dread that the person in the wheelchair is not the child she was told to expect. Swish! In a swift, angry motion, she grabs the sheet to reveal who is truly underneath. The sheet is yanked away, revealing a frail, unconscious, elderly woman, not a child, sitting in the wheelchair. Jolt! Miles away, Chase bolts upright in bed, waking from a nightmare with a gasp. In a panic, he clutches his shirt and desperately demands to know what day it is. On a phone call, Chase reacts with wide-eyed shock, exclaiming, "What?" The shaman is shown with a worried expression, a bead of sweat tracing down her temple. Looking puzzled, she watches as a security guard walks toward her in the lobby of a building. Gasp! She turns suddenly, her eyes wide with shock and realization. A man with stubble, possibly a police officer, reacts with disbelief, shouting, "What?" As an unseen person lists a series of serious charges against him: substance abuse, tax evasion, embezzlement. Chase grimaces and remains silent. A smiling man in a suit, sitting in the back of a car, invites a somber Chase to come meet his friends. In a tender moment, Chase and the shaman share a passionate kiss while lying in bed together. Now in a prison jumpsuit, Chase is surrounded by fellow inmates, eagerly begging him to read their fortunes too. Across a sterile table in an interrogation room, his boss looks at him with disappointment and asks how he ended up in this situation. Chase insists the money was his own and vows to find who set him up, but his declaration is interrupted when a man in glasses scoffs, "Did you just say, a soothsayer?" The pointed question catches Chase off guard, his determined expression faltering into one of shock. Slip. The man in the suit slides a file across the table toward Chase in the interrogation room. Chase's eyes widen in shock as he sees a newspaper article detailing the shaman's arrest after an elderly woman died during an exorcism. Viewed through the bars of a cell door, the shaman sits calmly on the floor in her prison uniform, a slight smile on her face. The man in glasses smirks, threateningly reminding Chase that they could have easily framed him as her accomplice. Seated across from an imprisoned Chase, the man in glasses leans forward and begins to propose a deal. The man offers Chase a chance to spread his wings again, an opportunity that captures Chase's full attention. When asked why he wasn't told the client's name, the man coolly replies that he didn't think Chase needed to know. Holding up a fortune chart, the man explains that a certain political candidate is destined to become an emperor this year. A golden emblem of two phoenixes appears above the dark silhouette of a man in power, hailed as, quote, the emperor in office. A man identified as Harrison Jung, the new chairman of Yulshin, looks out his high-rise office window with concern. Harrison Jung worries that if the new emperor takes office, a full investigation into the merger will create a massive problem. While Chase considers the proposition, the man explains their candidate accumulated wealth by flipping government land. The man assures Chase that the candidate's past has been handled, but Chase laments his own uselessness in prison, musing that a person born in the year of the rat would be a better fit. Stroking his chin thoughtfully, Chase tells the man he needs some time to come up with a viable plan. The man in the suit leans forward, asking Chase a pointed question based on his decades of service to Mr. Young. With a grim smile, the man declares that anyone can be a useful tool, and they are the ones who decide how to use them. Sitting on the floor of his cell, Chase examines the papers left for him, a fortune chart and a political flyer. He stares at the flyer for the two ruling party candidates, the man's words echoing in his mind about turning anyone into a tool. A memory of the shaman's soft smile fills his thoughts as she proposes, "Let's build an empire together." Writing intently, Chase resolves to hit the jackpot when he turns 42 as the stars align, clenching his fist with determination. Scribble. He furiously writes on a notepad in his prison uniform, recalling the man's declaration that we choose how to use our tools. Chase lays out his plan, explaining they must act fast and harness the combined energies of a grave and a living person's home. He gives a direct order: change their candidate's address to the northwest, and relocate his deceased father's grave to the same direction. Chase demands the fortunes of all key members of the candidate's party, pointedly adding, including yours. He continues his detailed instructions, ordering them to relocate the campaign office to the 27th floor of a specific building. Chase outlines a strategy for candidate Charles Park's campaign, identifying staff born in June and August as high risk, and ordering them transferred. Holding a document, Chase watches as the man in the suit considers the radical plan with a pensive expression. The man mentions a rival master fortune teller named Yuka, who uses a unique prediction system called the, quote, Dalma fortune. Chase, remembering that Yuka is supposedly in the Himalayas, realizes the opposition is desperate and asks the man if he's truly prepared to play dirty. The tense moment hangs in the air as Chase's challenging question about playing dirty is met with the man's silent contemplation. Bang! Chase proposes a dark ritual, hammering a thick nail into the grave of the opposing candidate's deceased father to secure their victory. The title card, Chase Fortune, appears, marking a new chapter in the unfolding political intrigue. Chase insists they must use every method available to counter the opposition's soothsayer, prompting the man to question the grave's security. With unwavering confidence, Chase declares there's always a way around obstacles when money and will are involved. Two agents approach a lone security guard at the gravesite, who tells them they're putting him in a difficult position. One of the agents casually dismisses the guard's worries, telling him to simply go have a drink in the nearby village. Silhouetted against the night sky, the two men advance toward the burial mound, carrying a sledgehammer and a large stake. From his cell, Chase confirms the next step, preparing a southeast-facing house for the opposing candidate to move into. The scene transitions to a bright, sunny day, showing 3 towering apartment buildings where the plan will unfold. A woman stands in a parking garage as the narrator explains the strategy is to bribe those around their target. A woman places a pot of food near clothing donation bins, a ritualistic method used to force someone to move by disrupting their energy. Later that night, 2 men perform the same ritual, with a note specifying the ideal time is between 11:30 p.m. and 1:30 a.m. Pour. Inside a dark room, a man pours beans and salt into a pot, explaining that these ancient proven methods are no joke. A woman in a purple jacket directs a group of campaign volunteers, ushering them forward with a cheerful, "This way, please." The volunteers, all wearing matching purple, gather under a tent to receive food and refreshments during a campaign event. Lastly, Chase's voiceover explains their ultimate strategy requires invoking the most powerful deity of all, the god of wealth. Inside the campaign headquarters, supporters enthusiastically chant "Charles Park" as the candidate waves to the crowd. A beaming Charles Park waves to his cheering supporters, who passionately chant his name in unison. The chants of Charles Park echo through the streets, surrounding his campaign headquarters in a wave of support. During a prison visit, an officer covertly whispers to Chase, "Bury the mirror tonight," leaving a nearby man completely bewildered. The man in the suit recalls the instructions about the mirror as Chase tells him that if he can't visit, he must go to the house himself. When asked what's next, Chase explains that while they can make the sun look like the moon, they can never change the force of fate. The man in the suit takes notes as Chase reiterates that appearances can be deceiving, but fate is an unchangeable force. In the dead of night, a small building stands near a fenced-off area, with a large burial mound looming in the background. Rustle. Guided by a headlamp, the man in the suit carries a shovel through the dark woods, heading toward the gravesite. Thud! With purpose, he drives the shovel deep into the grassy earth of the burial mound. At the Republican presidential nomination, the building is surrounded by chants of Charles Park as his campaign rally begins. A crowd of enthusiastic supporters in matching purple shirts hold up signs, declaring Charles Park the only man for the nation. Charles Park waves to his cheering supporters, while a bodyguard stands watch, the rally in full swing. An elderly man with a long ponytail, dressed in a traditional gray suit, stands apart from the crowd, silently observing the event. From inside a parked car, the nomination event is monitored on a dashboard screen, showing Charles Park and his team on stage. The opposition is also out in force, with supporters holding signs for their candidate, President Keith Wang, PFFT. Back in his cell, Chase lets out a derisive scoff. Pop, pop. Confetti explodes over a brightly lit stage during a celebratory political event. Keith Wang, the opposition candidate, watches with a grim and determined expression. A determined Keith Wang issues a sharp command to make him pay, causing the man in glasses to tremble as he listens. Bwahaha. Chase lies on the prison floor, laughing hysterically as his fellow inmates stare in confusion. Thwack. A powerful fist flies through the air, aimed directly at Chase. Held by a guard, Chase's face is brutally struck, blood spraying from his nose. Thwack! Another punch lands, leaving Chase beaten and bloodied on the floor. Ugh. Pinned to the ground in a sterile room, Chase is stomped by 2 men, while a guard impassively watches. A pack of cigarettes is tossed beside the bruised and unconscious Chase. A prison guard looms over the injured Chase, mocking him for not holding his tongue and questioning his status as a, quote, master. In a hazy vision, a young shaman in a white hood gently asks Chase if he's in a lot of pain. Barely conscious, the beaten Chase weakly asks his attacker why they did this to him. The shaman, tears streaming down her face, tells Chase he brought this on himself, but he insists he only followed his fortune. As the shaman's face fades from his memory, Chase recalls a voice from his past asking him to pass a cigarette. Writhing in agony, Chase blames his suffering on his bad fortune and tearfully apologizes to his father. A black and white memory surfaces of his parents holding him as a baby, his mother thinking how happy she was that he was her son. A spectral hand gently touches his face as Chase cries out to his father, confessing how much he used to resent him. Overwhelmed with grief, Chase sobs and asks his father how he could possibly not resent him back. A vision of his elderly father kneels over him, weeping and begging him to set aside his greed while apologizing profusely. The man in the suit arrives at the prison but is denied a visit, as the receptionist informs him the prisoner doesn't wish to see anyone. The man remembers Chase's foresight, recalling his instruction to go to the house himself if a visit was denied. Chase reflects on his philosophy. You can trick the sun and moon, but you can never truly change fate. Now bandaged and with his arm in a sling, Chase calmly asks what happened to the vice chairman's son. A voiceover explains that people find solace by comparing themselves to others in worse situations. When the man in glasses questions his meaning, an injured but resolute Chase declares that while you can't trick fate, you can trick people. In a hushed tone, Chase gives the man in the suit precise instructions to find, lock and chain, an empty office near the Blue House. Chase orders the removal of Charles Park's top campaign staff, leading to a woman's shocked protest and her boss's unapologetic shrug. His next instruction is to find someone who looks like a master, cutting to the elderly man with the ponytail squatting on a sidewalk. Chase directs his agent to take the old man to a restaurant frequented by Keith Wang's campaign team, where he's promptly escorted. Chase explains the purpose of the mirrors to the man in the suit, instructing him to bury them facing all directions to reflect negative energy. Looking the man in glasses dead in the eye, Chase calmly predicts that Keith Wang will become the next president, no matter what. Chase warns the man in glasses that once Keith Wang wins, the vice chairman will throw him under the bus without a second thought. Scribbling on a piece of paper, Chase offers a glimmer of hope, suggesting a way out if the man follows the path of Madame Zheng's husband. Swish. Chase reveals what he's written, claiming to have seen it in the man's fortune, and taps the single word, betrayal. The man in glasses stares in wide-eyed terror at the implication of Chase's prediction. Slip. Chase pushes the paper across the table, telling the terrified man that betrayal is his only path to survival. Snap! The scene shifts from an IV drip in a dark room to the blinding flash of cameras, hinting at a new, public-facing scheme. Pushed in a wheelchair by two guards, a bandaged man with an IV drip is wheeled down a sterile hallway as cameras flash relentlessly. Snap! News reports Harrison Young, vice chairman of Yulshin Group, appearing before prosecutors after being found guilty of funding a candidate. A news anchor reports a massive search and seizure of the Yulshin Group, which now faces further corruption charges as a man watches from his couch. The man continues watching the news, which details Yulshin Group's decade-long investigation for stock market manipulation. The newscast concludes that the entire Yulshin Group is in a mess after causing over $100 million in damages to investors. The news shifts to Yulshin's head secretary, Jeffrey Hyun, who was unable to escape review as new allegations emerged during the investigation. The report concludes that the company is now temporarily in the hands of the newly appointed vice chairman, Yuli Jung. Under the chapter title Double-Edged Sword, two towering modern skyscrapers stand against a dramatic, cloudy sky. Step. A man with a small ponytail and a backpack walks through the gates of the Cheongju detention facility. The man stops abruptly, a look of surprise on his face as he seems to recognize something or someone. The scene shifts to a man and a woman standing together on a city sidewalk near a bus stop. The man with the ponytail and the man from the sidewalk share a knowing, subtle smile. Thud. A powerful nail gun drives fasteners into a wooden frame during construction. Chase oversees movers bringing a sofa into a new space, telling them to place it in front of the wall. A woman sits at her desk, reading a newspaper headline about the continuous crisis facing the Yulshin Group. Ring. At 5:59 a.m., Chase is woken by a call from someone listed as Madame Zheng. On the phone, Madame Zheng notes she heard he was released, and Chase confirms it's been about 2 weeks. Madame Zheng, standing in her high-rise office, mentions the recent company turmoil and begins to make him an offer. Chase cuts her off, pointedly addressing her as Vice Chairwoman Zheng before thanking her for the offer, which clearly surprises her. Coldly, Chase rejects her, stating he no longer needs people like her and advising her to let nature take its course. Vroom. A silver car speeds down a road with mountains visible in the distance. In a peaceful, sunlit forest, a dark-haired woman in traditional robes is suddenly jolted from her meditation. A man with a backpack appears on the path above, calling out the name Helena. Helena looks up at the man, her expression pensive and melancholic. Now sitting together in the grass, the man informs Helena that they have suspended the indictment for now. The two sit in a heavy silence, both lost in their own somber thoughts. The man asks about the goddess, and Helena sadly confesses that the goddess has left her. Overcome with emotion, Helena laments